Play recording. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much for coming today and joining me on this Zoom. I really appreciate you taking time out of your quarantine to come discuss some topics that we're struggling with in education right now. So feel free to talk at any time. This would just be kind of like the same as if we were doing it in a classroom. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see the PowerPoint that I'm going to be presenting. Okay, can all of you see the PowerPoint? Yes, okay, good deal. All right, let me make sure that I'm, okay. So over the past couple months, I've been doing a lot of research on what are some things that our school is struggling with in general. And the thing that kept reoccurring was that our 8th grade scores on reading comprehension were well below what they should be, well below average. So my problem statement was just that our 8th graders are reading on like a 4th to 5th grade reading level, which is, 3 grades or 4 grades lower than what they should be reading on, which is not just affecting their English classes, but it's affecting all of their classes. They can't read their math problems because they don't understand the language in it. They can't understand scientific jargon because they don't understand the language in it. And then history is, just a souped up English class basically with tons of vocabulary, and they're not able to understand because they are on a much lower reading level than we're presenting them. So that was really my problem statement after looking at our STAR scores for the past 3 years and our Scantron scores for the past 3 years. So if you look at this first table over here, that is our Scantron scores from 2017 until the winter scores of 2020. We took it in January. Because of COVID, we didn't get our spring scores. But you can see that most of our students are falling in the below average or average low. So all of that shows us that the majority of our students are not reading on reading level. Then our STAR scores just back that up. So most of our students, you can see, are reading from 0.0 to 6.9. Now, if I break that down even more, you can see that they're on the 4th to 5th grade reading levels, with 7th grade being even lower. But I focused on 8th grade because I knew since I taught them, I'm teaching them, I thought that I could focus more and be more present in those ELA classes for the study. So my hypothesis is if we incorporate more techniques of teaching vocabulary skills, we should see an increase in our reading comprehension scores. Some definitions that I pulled that we would be discussing would be the accelerated reading program. And we all know that's from kindergarten to 12th grade. It is taking from their scores, and it shows them kind of what kind of books they would be reading. If our kids are on the 4th grade reading level, then they're reading 4th grade level books, which is not appropriate for an 8th grader. The second definition would be college and career ready standards, which we know is a list of content that we're supposed to be teaching from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And by the end of the year, our 8th graders should be masters of all of those standards. Scantron, we know, is the old state mandated test, but I'm going to be using it again this year as a pre and post test. Since we have it for 1 more year, we might as well take advantage of that. So we're going to be administering it. It's a test that is adaptive, and it gives students a score that tells them if they're within a certain bracket. So it's a norm reference test and a criterion reference test. So we're going to be able to compare both of those. The STAR test is, it's a test that tells the student what grade level they're reading on. It gives them the year and the month. So if a student is reading at 6.9, they're 6th grade, 9 months. And then reading comprehension is just if a student can comprehend the text that they're reading, using some prior knowledge as well. So that is kind of what we're going to be discussing during this presentation. So I gathered 6 different articles, peer-reviewed articles about reading comprehension techniques that studies have shown may or may not be beneficial. And I kind of broke them down into this slide right here. So the first one, they used critical reading text. So they broke the text into chunks of reading, and then they scaffolded it with a multi-step process. So the students would chunk it with the teacher, then they would get together and they would answer questions about that one particular chunk, and then they would come back together with the teacher and put it all together to see how their reading comprehension worked. That case study showed students are improving quite a bit just by breaking it down into smaller pieces. The web-based text structure or strategy, it was a web-based platform that students went to, and it kind of did it with them, like it summarized the text with them, and then they answered questions about their prior knowledge, and it kind of gave them that aid that a teacher would, but one-on-one. And honestly, they didn't see very good results from it, because the students were able to, they were able to work with it, but they weren't getting that teacher feedback. That's what the study suggested. So that kind of, I disregarded that article, but I still took into consideration the first one. Then the third one, the collaborative strategic reading in middle school science and social studies, I really analyzed this one because it used multi-tier process of they previewed the text together, then they clicked and chunked it, then they determined if they even got the gist of those chunks, and then they wrapped it up together. So the teacher was not just giving them the article, answering questions. They were breaking it down, identifying where they were struggling, determining what those problems were, and then bringing it all back together. The next one was literacy and tech reading in middle schools, ELA. This one, it really wasn't a study about a way to teach reading. It was just saying that we do not focus on teaching to read in middle school. We're focused on reading to learn instead of learning to read, because teachers in middle school we're not reading teachers. We don't know how to teach kids to read. We're teaching them to learn from the readings. So how are middle schools going to have to shift back to that learning to read in order for them to be able to read to learn? Then the reading comprehension assessment, it identified if reading out loud with someone helped reading comprehension, and it definitely did. So pairing students up and having them read together, or just reading one-on-one with a teacher, increased reading scores dramatically. And then the last one seemed to be the most beneficial across the board, was just increasing vocabulary instruction. Just overall in every content, just increasing the vocabulary instruction, increase their reading comprehension. So I took all of those literacy articles and kind of mapped out a plan that we could implement in our school this year. So this would be the timeline. I've already identified the problem. I've done the data. I've selected the participants, which is going to be all of the 8th graders. We have, 400 odd students that we're going to be using this year. I've done the literacy review to determine the action plan, and this is it. So there's 3 components. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to assess their prior knowledge. and we're going to walk through the passages by chunking text. So we will have already administered Scantron, like the very first week of school, to figure out, kind of what their score was. Then every 8th grader in their ELA classes are going to be given one reading article a week that is on an 8th grade reading level. And then we're going to start doing these components. So we figure out their prior knowledge based off the article. We chunk the text. Then we're going to do that group readings where they're going to read it together and they're going to identify words that they don't know. Whether it's simple words or specific vocabulary, they're going to identify those words either by highlighting or writing them down. Then we're going to make a master list on the board. So the teacher is going to have the students call out these words that they don't know, or she's going to walk around the room and figure out if there's common vocabulary words that the students are unaware of. Then the teacher will be teaching how to look for context clues within the chunks. And if there's some passages where there's just not any context clues. So they will also be teaching Marzano's 6-step method. So there's going to be a lot of upfront work, but once the students are kind of aware of, okay, I don't know this word, can I look for context clues? If I can't look for context clues, how else am I going to figure out this word? So in the beginning, the teacher's doing everything with them. We're doing it one-on-one, we're doing it in groups, we're doing it with the class. And then over the school year, it will eventually progress to where the student is able to do it by themselves. They'll be able to work through those Marzano steps of, providing the description, restating the description of the words, constructing a picture of what they think the word represents. We do this in science sometimes with vocab graffiti. The kids love it. It really works. So that would be one way to do it. Then we're going to engage them with some of these vocabulary words from previous articles, so it stays fresh on their mind. Then we're going to just play games with it. We're just going to constantly be bringing up vocabulary words, new and old. So if a word wall, that would be up to individual teachers, how they want to keep repeating these words. But overall, we're going to be working with these 3 components by doing it with them and then throughout the year, progressively allowing them to do it by themselves. Then at the end of the year, we're going to be administering the Scantron test again, as well as the STAR test again. So we have the post test of Scantron, and then we have the STAR, and we have the pre-test and the post test of Scantron and STAR. After we do all of the pre and post tests, I'm going to gather the data and I'm going to prepare results to see if we really did increase reading comprehension. So I'm going to do the results from not only ELA, but also from social studies and science to determine if it overall increased their reading comprehension in just English or if it overall increased it in all of the subjects. So that's kind of the plan. I'm going to be meeting with just the ELA teachers and the administrators to walk through exactly how they would go through these components and how they would kind of move throughout the year. And I would be checking in with them throughout the year. But honestly, that's going to be, we're kind of just checking out to see if increased vocabulary instruction even helps. Does that make sense to everybody? Y'all have anything to say? Any questions or comments?
I think this is great. I love this. I studied about the chunking the material when I was in class, and I think that breaking it down in smaller parts really, really helps them to not be so overwhelmed with so many words at a time. So I like this.
Definitely. Anybody else?
It also helps with your EL kids and your special ed kids. They're already struggling as it is. And so by, like Pam said, chunking it into smaller sections and having that teacher to help at first to teach them how to read, to find those words. Of course, those type students are going to have more of those the words that they don't understand, especially the EL students.
Right.
You know, they don't even know the language yet, you know, and they don't understand the words. So to me, this is really going to be beneficial for special ed and the EL kids.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think so.
And having 19 years of reading, because that's what I did for 19 years, you're on track.
Good. Good.
Everything I did in first grade for
Yeah.
19 years. So yes, it works.
Mhm.
You
Well,
just got to be consistent with it.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, none of us, I mean, you are because you moved from elementary to secondary, but none of us in secondary are equipped to teach them how to read. We don't know how to do that. So we're going to have to get back to those basics.
Amen.
So I definitely think, you know, those first grade skills are going to come in handy when teaching the 8th graders because they didn't get it in first grade, clearly. Or we're going to have to reiterate them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I like having the word wall in the class too. I think at the end of the year, being able to see exactly how many words that they have progressed over through the school year I think that's encouraging for them too.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everyone to have, like, in your binder and notebook, whatever. I mean, we had like a grammar, like, spiral notebook. Mark off part of it as a word wall in there. That way they have their own word wall with them. And they can see that word wall from class to class, you know.
Yeah. It could
going in my class. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah, because most of them take the same notebook around with them all day long anyway. You know.
Just make a tab, word wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Even if we did an interactive one this year, since we're going 1-to-1 and they're carrying it around, they would always have it.
Right.
I made one for technology since that's what I'm going to. That's major. You got to have a word wall.
Yeah.
And I'm elementary, so.
Well, if y'all don't have anything else, I'm going to let y'all go. But I really appreciate all of you coming and listening and really putting your input into it. I think it's going to be a great year. I think it'll really help our kids. So,
Yep.
all righty. Let's see. Let me